Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of September the 18th till 24th, 2023. We have quite an intense sky playing out all throughout this week, but this is where it's really up to us how we interpret the intensity that is present for us individually, of course, because collectively it might not be all that much susceptible to interpretation. It is gonna be what it is gonna be, so to speak, because the energies are preparing for a really explosive, let's say, full moon that we are going to be having on the 29th of September. So this is just the calm, or better said, the distraction before the storm. But regardless of how we perceive the energies of this week playing out in our lives, we must know that there is a strong element of breakthrough. And this breakthrough has a lot to do with the Venus and also the Mercury retrograde that we are just about to navigate out from. Venus is already making a bit of progress in the sign of Leo, going forward on her shadow path, and Mercury is going to be picking up a little bit of speed this week as well. So in that sense, this is quite good news, because on one hand, now Venus is going to be holding conversations of tension both with Jupiter and Uranus, but this is not really a new energy. We have felt this, we have been subjected to it all through the Venus retrograde. So somewhere from the 22nd of August until this present moment, if I'm not mistaken. But at the same time, Mercury, as it starts going forward, it holds a trine with Jupiter and then prepares itself to hold a trine with Uranus. And that is the element of clarity, that is the element of breakthrough, that is the element where the intellectual sphere is at least grounded enough to guide us towards the best possible choices, contracts, agreements, problem solving, whatever it is that we needed to focus on, redo, rethink, reanalyze in this Mercury retrograde period. Now, those are becoming crystal clear, and chances are we are getting very close to solutions, if not having the solution this week, because, as I said, Mercury is going to pick up quite a bit of speed. Now, before I get into the horoscope, I would just like to make an announcement. I have created a tutorial video on how to read your birth chart and how to at least attempt to put the astrology that you might be hearing from me or any other astrologer, with the weekly energies in context for you personally in your life. So I'm going to link to that video down below. Feel free to check it out. Now, with this being said, I will share my screen and let us see the energies of the week. So right now we are on the 18th of September, and one of the more relevant aspects is the sun holding a trine with Uranus. This is the element of epiphany. This is the element of our own ingenuity, even our higher thinking, sometimes inspired by the cosmic, inspired by the divine, because Uranus opens us up to that, and Uranus is Mercury's higher octave. Now, if we use, Mercury usually to communicate with each other, and the classical expressions of Mercury, well, then we can use that Uranus to communicate with reality around us, or that which lies beyond reality, the divine, for example. So that can be quite a powerful moment when we have the best ideas, when we have the best impulses. This is also an earthly energy. The sun being in Virgo, earth sign, Uranus in Taurus, also earth sign. So sometimes that flash of insight, that epiphany, that bright idea can come through instinctual forces. We just feel it within us, we just feel it in our gut. It just strongly resonates with us. So that can be a valid, anchor of guidance this week. Now, of course, that Sun and Uranus trine can bring a lot of realizations, can bring a lot of like breakthrough in a palpable, clear, concrete way, where something, landed in your life, a job, an opportunity, a professional to help you, a solution, a plan is working, or an advice that you got, because that Uranus can be a person who would usually be outside of your sphere, and an advice coming from that person may work like a charm. So regardless of how this plays out, it can bring quite a lot of benefits into our lives. Now, at the same time, as you can see, Venus at 15 degrees of Leo, so going forward on her shadow path, holds the third and final time the square with Jupiter. Now, this time around, Venus is direct and Jupiter is retrograde. This changes the configuration a little bit because it is Jupiter symbolism, which is greatly internalized, especially in the sign of Taurus. What does this mean? Our sense of justice about our material life, our, earthly manifestation, physical body, anything that has to stimulate or trigger our five senses, how loved we feel, all of these elements, but at the same time, our deep faith, our self worth. And when I say self worth, with Jupiter in the picture, it's not just a Venusian type of self worth, even though Venus is the ruler of this energy because she rules the sign of Taurus. But it is a Jupiterian one, where Jupiter represents what we know, in a sense, not in a down to earth, rational, and logical sense like Mercury, but the deep faith of just knowing. This is where our mental spheres, that which we know, don't even have to check and apply because it comes much deeper from within us, like the, expression of faith or our highest principles, our highest aspirations. That is the nature of Jupiter. So you can imagine that that square is going to leave us quite frustrated, quite, perhaps disappointed a tiny bit in how the Venus retrograde played out in our lives. For example, if that Venus retrograde comes with the wisdom, with the message, with the personal truth that a person is not worth it, a relationship is not worth it, we burned out to the point of no return with a career, with a job, with a hobby, with something that we used to love deeply, or maybe we came to the realization that we simply cannot push forward. We need a break, or we need more joy. We need more love. We need more satisfaction in our lives. For some people, maybe this was the biggest, conclusion and the biggest highlight of this Venus retrograde. It doesn't stir up immediate resolve, immediate actions, immediate changes, but a wisdom that will impact us quite deeply, especially in the positive sense for the future, because whatever came into our realization at this Venus retrograde period, well, Jupiter is expanding that. Jupiter is making us feel that like it is the biggest truth in our lives. And when I say it's feeling oriented, so it's really about everything in our inner world points to that. So it's going to be quite an intense feeling. Maybe falling out of love, a sense of disappointment, but at the same time, no, this is fixed energy. We get the message of what not is not working, or whatever it is that we need to change, rearrange, etc. But we also need to focus on that which we already have, that which is already set up for us to make progress. For example, not to accept certain compromises, not to accept to stay in situations which just reflect our low self-worth, or which reflect our need to be needed, etc., etc. So whatever this Venus retrograde spoke to you in your life, so where has this Venus been going retrograde, so backwards, and now forwards, in which area of life that it might be very, very suggestive and symbolical. And another energy that I would like to mention is that Mars holds, so you can see Mars here, a semi-square with Black Moon Lilith. Now, Mars is a very intense energy, a very singular energy, an energy of, strong focus. Yet in the sign of Libra, it is not able to embody that singularity, its highest quality, because in the sign of Libra, it is forced to take into consideration the well-being of others, the situation of others, the choice of others, basically. So that kind of makes Mars not as intense as it can usually be, while Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Leo, especially in the last degrees, it's very much about intensity. It is very much about our hearts screaming at us something, a message of their own. Whatever frustrates it, whatever angers it, whatever irritates it, whatever the heart has had enough of. Now it screams at us through the semi-square for us to try our hardest to do something about it. But Mars in the sign of Libra is not the typical Mars, so it cannot take immediate action. Now, this on one hand is a good thing because we need to take everything into consideration, especially that we're not out of the Mercury and Venus retrograde just yet. They are no longer retrograde, but they're not out of their shadow. So we're still processing that. But on the other hand, it can make us feel deeply frustrated, irritated, angry, because that is the nature of the semi-square. Now, if this wasn't enough, the Sun is starting to perfect its opposition to Neptune. Now, this energy is perhaps the more dominant one that is going to stay with us, especially very strongly at the beginning of the week. Now, this energy can represent a sense of disappointment, a sense of disillusionment, a sense that our minds are clouded. Now, it is absolutely true that Mercury and Venus themselves do come with clarity. Mercury, like down to earth, rational, intellectual clarity. Venus, the clarity of the heart, even if in a heavier way that I don't want to live this anymore. But that is a truth. That is clarity that you cannot take it anymore. And we had all this Venus retrograde season to, give us the chance to compensate for this. As in, well, am I truly sure that I cannot live this anymore? Or is it just my Leo inner child playing up, etc., etc.? Well, chances are, whatever we went through this Venus retrograde period, it showed us if it's truly the situation and the case where I just can't live this anymore, or was it where it was just our inner child was playing up or something within us, and if we satisfy that inner energy, the situation is all that much clearer now. So these two energies do hold a kind of clarity, yet the Sun opposing Neptune, the knowledge, the wisdom will just feel like it doesn't help us all that much. Because in the big picture, perhaps we feel lost, or we feel that all of our efforts, even if they worked like a charm, they haven't got us all that far. Or we may feel like going back, falling back into a state of lethargy. I think that's how you pronounce it. Or a state of, like wishy-washiness where life reality isn't all that real, if that makes sense. So we end up living either a mini episode of depression or living in fantasy, living in dreams, escapism. May that be a book, computer game, fantasy, based or your own imagination, your own inner creativity. May it be that, or it can also be like a sense of pessimism where, you know, as I said, Mercury is starting to come with results, trying to Jupiter. Sun at the very beginning of the week trying to Uranus. That must mean some positive breakthrough, idea, epiphany, communication, or something is working in your life. Yet we will be in a way blind to the more practical and positive side of the picture, because this Neptune tends to drown the light of our consciousness, the sun, in the very rational, in the very, down to earth energy of Virgo. So we need to keep the balance, because that Neptune may just come with a certain kind of reality check. A reality check where, every other outer planet is retrograde, which means that in a big karmic way, we're not going to be making all that much progress in the present, only later on towards the end of this year, towards the end of autumn and beginning of winter, then winter, and of course next year. So that when the bigger planets start to move direct, and then later on, when they conquer new ground, so to speak, that way may be a time when we can expect progress in a more real sense. So in a way, Neptune is basically not really lying to us that we cannot expect, a massive leap towards our biggest goals and dreams in the present. But at the same time, the sun in the sign of Virgo is also telling us, but we need to be all that grateful and appreciate all the progress that we did achieve. And at the same time, this energy tells us that trying our very best every single day, every single hour, every single moment, when we are faced with hardships and difficulties, regardless of their nature, trying our best, and whatever that result may be is enough to get us through, is enough to keep us motivated. It is enough to at least make us be on the floating line. Yet, as I said, this is the best way to use the Sun and Neptune opposition. Chances are it won't feel this, balance. Chances are either we delve into fantasy, we delve into illusion in a more extreme way where, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter if the energies in the present moment don't promise us all that much big leap of faith, but my manifestation, my energy, my desire, my very own personal momentum can get me there. I can bypass everything. Now, this might not be all that much realistic, and as long as we don't take that for granted, it can get us through the week, a bit of fantasy. But the other extreme expression is where strong sense of pessimism, and I do not encourage that. I know that we have this aspect, Sun opposing Neptune every year, and we did have on this Virgo and Pisces axis for a lot of years, but this is where the energies are starting to get quite intense. So we may not choose pessimism. Pessimism is not real. It is not the truth. It is not us using our inner forces in a self-serving and wise way. So we do need to stay out of pessimism, at least this week, because it can get really, really heavy. We must not misuse Jupiter, Venus square Jupiter, to amplify the negative that even Venus herself can pose, because Neptune is only the higher octave of Venus. So this can also translate into a Venusian energy where our heart cannot take it anymore. So we don't need pessimism for that. Now, another expression of this energy is where we might feel very, very fatigued. We might feel the need to take a lot of naps, to stay in dream mode, to stay in unconscious mode. And, if we can afford that, that is a more favorable expression of this energy. Now, of course, for artists, for spiritualists, this escapism beyond the veil can be very, very benefic, especially for your artistic creation, artistic expression, the theme of your poetry, of your song, etc., etc. And at the same time, we must, stay away from dangerous water. I'm not even sure how to explain. If there is any kind of danger that water might pose for you personally, at the time of this Neptune-Sun opposition, we must take all the precautions or stay away from danger. Of course, this can also be like an emotional flooding, where that water is tears. But for example, if the seas are very turbulent or any body of water poses a real threat or danger, this week maybe you should stay away from water. Of course, that depends where this opposition is for you personally. Now, another energy that I would like to speak about before I move on is Ceres having moved already into the sign of Scorpio. Here you can see Ceres. Now, this represents, an issue raised about food and what's in it, because Scorpio is investigative energy. What is in the food? So you can imagine this will raise issues around substances in food, how Scorpio is the sign of mutation, so how natural they are, what was the intervention of science or anything similar. So we can expect a lot of debate and heated topics about the origins of food and, of course, what we do with it further. Now, moving on the 19th is where we have that Sun opposing Neptune being exact to the degree. So, as I said earlier, this may bring on, a shift of mood, something that Neptune takes over us. May that be, as I said, a beautiful fantasy or something rather surreal, or we may be inclined to live from within, to stay away moments of sacred solitude, so to speak. But it can also represent, depression, or it can also represent, pessimism, where we just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if this is the case, do not let this take rulership over you. Fight it, because it is not the truth. That is not a reality check. It is basically a self-defeating thought. If anything, that is more of a lie than being overly optimistic, even though that in itself is also a different expression of this extreme. But pessimism and, depression, especially if we amplify it, magnify it for ourselves, this isn't the period for that. Because it, not just that it can be dangerous, but it can simply set us back much more that we can afford karmically, emotionally, spiritually, and why not even materially. So moving on the 20th, we have the Sun perfecting its trine with Pluto. Now, this is one of the more fortunate and more powerful energies, because this represents especially the clarity of where our power lies, where our own personal power lies, how to claim it back. This is a very sovereign-oriented aspect, because the Sun in the sign of Virgo has the facts, the details clearly perceived, and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn shows us what kind of options, what kind of power we have to do something with that. And this can be an energy of breakthrough in so very many different ways. you get a job, the interview, finally you hear back that it worked, that you're hired, someone helps you, someone supports you. A Capricorn is like a father figure, manager, boss, elder person, someone with experience who can take you under their wing. This can represent help from government, from institutions, from organizations. So this is one of the most fortunate energy, which does represent either a moment of real breakthrough, because we cannot forget that at the beginning of the week, the sun held a trine with Uranus as well. So we can, in a very imprecise way, can consider this a grand Earth trine. So there is some kind of breakthrough, there is some kind of solution, there is some kind of fix attached to this energy. But at the same time, this can also represent, a psychological empowerment where we, make the choice, make the decision to fight for ourselves with our, sun in Virgo, with our intellect, with our skills, our mastery, our inner resolve, basically. We make the decision that we are definitely fighting for ourselves. And this is the big, how should I say? This is the big idea between the T-square, the ongoing T-square between Pluto and the nodes of the moon. And this T-square is quite, tight as well. Pluto at 27 degrees, nodes of the moon 25 degrees. Nodes of the moon, north node in the sign of Aries, individuality, sovereignty, our own personal breakthrough. And we are responsible for that. And the south node in the sign of Libra, every partner, every external element that no longer serves us, and we need to terminate it, break free from that. And as you can see, Mars is getting closer and closer and closer. Not this week, but, it's getting closer to that south node. Mars is the activator. Whenever Mars conjuncts a planet or a very important point, it activates its power. It gives it strength. It gives it manifestation. So as Mars gets closer to that south node, all of us are getting ready to make certain kind of contractual or partnership or alliance or one-on-one choices. May that be a compromise, may it be a negotiation, may it be termination, or may it be to resurrect or rebirth the relationship into a new, much more fairer form, because Libra is, the sign of justice and equilibrium and fairness. So, and another energy is that Mars is quincunx in conjunction with Jupiter. Again, Jupiter is the planet of law and justice. What is true, what is not true. And this quincunx is, challenging us. Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. We feel how our lives should be. We feel the inner truth, the inner value, the inner worth, the inner justice. With Mars in the sign of Libra, how do we make it external? Or how do we make other people, Libra, in an institution, contractual partner, the other, see our own truth, justice point of view? So this is basically the expression of the quincunx, and we need to be careful not to be like way too fanatic. We need, we need to make it mutual. We give, but we receive. We want our voices to be listened to, but in exchange, we also need to listen. Now, another energy at this moment, you cannot see it on my screen clearly, but the moon was opposing Uranus a few hours back, still on the 20th. So that means a very strong emotional intensity, an emotional outburst, especially that the moon in Scorpio can represent very heavy feelings, that which lies in our unconscious, giving the sun opposing Neptune into this context as well, this might be quite a tricky day, emotionally speaking, when we do need to balance out our energies. There is a lot of good happening in our lives. Why? Well, look at this Venus sextiling Mars. That's action. That is where the truth in our hearts, because Venus is the ruler. Venus rules Libra, and Mars is very, very comfortable, loves being in the sign of Leo. But right now it's the other way around. Venus is in Leo, Mars is in Libra. So this is where we need to take diplomatic action, because Venus is the truth in our hearts. Remember, she's squared by Jupiter, expanded, so we feel it very strongly. But the sextile and also the quincunx, Mars quincunx Jupiter and Mars sextile Venus, asks us to be diplomatic, asks us to be empathic, asks us to apply our, diplomatic skills, our negotiation skills, everything that has to do with the beauty of communication, beauty of self-expression, Leo, to the maximum, because that is the way through breakthrough and successful, progress, especially with the Venus retrograde issues ongoing in our lives towards resolution. But as I said, the moon opposing Uranus, and basically the moon opposing Uranus means that the moon sextiles the sun, the moon in the sign of Scorpio. Again, the truth underneath, the surface, the truth coming from our own unconscious, moon in the sign of Scorpio. That might come as an element of surprise. Whatever we may feel, whatever emotion shoots up from within us, that might be a big truth that we need to take into consideration and use it with our diplomacy, if you know what I mean. And I'm so very sorry, the moon and Mars are not sextiling each other. I misread the aspect. That is a minor aspect, not a sextile. But still, taking it into consideration, oh sorry, the sun and moon are in a conversation of sextile, not Mars. So taking that into consideration, this is where we need to apply a strong sense of logic. The sun in Virgo brings the logic, moon in the sign of Scorpio, how that sense of logic goes deeply down to our unconscious and is understood. So we do something quite practical and palpable with it. Now, moving on the 22nd, we have the sun in an erratic position in the sign of Virgo. Let me move a couple of hours. Yeah. So you see the aneretic sun here. Now, this might represent the most extreme qualities of Virgo, where we can truly overthink, when we can truly overanalyze, we can truly overdo it for the sake of perfectionism, and we might be a bit, discriminatory, we might label, we might be a bit judgmental, but this aspect doesn't last very long. It will, on the 23rd, move into the sign of Libra, which marks the Libra equinox that I'm going to be speaking about just a little bit, just in a few moments. What I also want to say on this 22nd, Mars has passed 15 degrees of Libra. As you can see, it is at 16 degrees and 43 minutes of the sign of Libra, which means it's on what we call in astrology via combusta, so the path of fire. This is when it's starting to get more intense in expression. This is where until it's in Libra, relationships are really going to be put under the microscope, looked at, and decisions are going to be born here. Just that it's not very easy, because as I said, Mars in Libra has to weigh the options. And that is kind of against the nature of Mars. no problem, because when Mars enters into the sign of Scorpio, that's when it's its classical self, so to speak. So there is that energy playing out at that moment. So finally moving on to the 23rd of September, yes, we do have the sun moving into the sign of Libra, which means the Libra equinox. On my side of the planet, that means the beginning of autumn. Now, this is very interesting and quite important for a number of different reasons. One of it is not necessarily astrological. At the time of solstices and equinoxes, the ancient knew that the veil between the worlds is especially thin. This is when important communication downloads to whatever is beyond the veil, or us with our ancestors, or basically this is when the spirit and even the psyche can influence reality, especially, you know, in an amplified way, because we have access, greater access to beyond the veil than ever before. So this can be quite an important moment for all of us personally, when we do need to, just like at the time of a new moon, just that this is something a bit different, we need to plant the seeds of intention into the universe, but not necessarily given the context like a new moon. This is where what we need in this autumn cycle, or where you spring, wherever you are on the planet, what you need that to do for you personally. Because the South Node is also in Libra, Mars is also in Libra, and dwarf planet Orcus is also in Libra. So this is where the energy is focusing on Libra. The energy is gathering in Libra. And Libra, as I said, is so much about our choices, decisions, where we do need to weigh whatever we have in our lives. And for us to be able to make the best possible weighing, the sentence, basically, where we are the judges of our own lives, in order to get the best possible sentence that we give. I repeat, we do need to use the equinox moment to plant seeds of intention, to clarity, to harmony, to equilibrium, and most importantly, to peace in our lives, within all our relationship. Justice, harmony, and peace are going to be very, very important. Why? Well, this following full moon, not this week yet, but the following, in the sign of Aries, will bring intensity and heat and a bit of assertion, and then Pluto on its own grinding down on Capricorn, top down authority. That represents a certain kind of assertion and a certain kind of battle between wills in itself. So, we want ourselves individually, personally, just in our own dimension, in our own bubble, to be more at peace than ever before. But like any equinox, this also marks the karmic theme for in my hemisphere, the autumn. So the next 3 months. So other aspects that are on the sky at this moment are also quite important. And those aspects are Mercury trining Jupiter, which is really, really good. The Mercury-Jupiter trine is where, justice, but how do we get to justice? How do we get to what value we want to embody? Jupiter and Taurus, in a down-to-earth, rational, applicable way. Mercury in the sign of Virgo, and also in a pure way, in a non-extreme way, because that is always the intent of Virgo, to make it, logical, safe, and sound for everyone. You can't please everyone, of course, but that is usually what motivates Virgo, to make it okay for everyone through the intellect, through the ingenuity, through the problem solving of the mind. So this energy, this karmic intent basically is going to be amplified. Now, the other energy is that Venus is squaring both Jupiter and Uranus. Neither of these squares is exact. This is almost like she's squaring their midpoint, basically. But this brings the great sense of urgency that we truly need to take into consideration the truth within our heart, our emotions, our heart-based emotions. Because if we ignore them, whatever choices, compromises we may serve us, practically, physically, whatever, but our heart, we cannot allow our hearts to be unhappy. Black Moon Lilith, almost anoretic in the sign of Leo. That's very, very important. Because the heart space, the sphere of the heart has a very, very big saying in what we generate as reality for ourselves. We may be showered with everything that fills our desires and pleases our five senses, Taurus energy, but if our hearts are unhappy, in vain, everything is in vain. That is what Black Moon Lilith is trying to tell us, that the heart imperatively must have its own tiny bit of happiness, satisfaction, or at least being able to, go on, my heart will go on. That is a must. If the heart at least can go on and see something optimistic in the future, fight for something, even in the present is not all that flowery and nice, that's still enough. So that is very, very important. And again, Venus square Uranus, sometimes we need to stay open to that which is outside of our comfort zone. Romance-wise, relationship-wise, sensually speaking, work-wise, why not Taurus, money, source of income-wise, everything that has to do with both Taurus and Leo. We need to stay also open to that which, as I said, is not usually in our sphere of comfort. Another energy that is very significant and important, and in the context of the equinox, the karmic theme of the next 3 months, Venus trining, where are you? Chiron. Venus Chiron at 18 degrees of Aries, Venus at 18 degrees of Leo. So what does this tell us? All the hardship, all the immense frustration, all the setbacks, all the emotional storm of this Venus retrograde period that all of us suffered through, this is when we start to get the essence of it. Why was it so hard? Why was it so difficult? Why did we have to reanalyze the past relationships or whatever the theme was for us personally in order for us to heal? Venus trine Chiron is the element of healing. Love within our hearts, self-love heals us like nothing else. But at the same time, however we can heal ourselves with that self-love, we can generate the same love for another person. Love simply heals, but we need to embody love. We need to believe in love. We need to breathe love into our beings. We need to align even our mental sphere with love, with benevolence, with sheer good intent. And then is when the power of love is going to grow and grow and grow. And our simple presence, our simple, words of healing, expression of healing, or whatever we can offer is going to be profoundly transformative, as I said, in the healing sense. This energy, this Venus retrograde made and is making, basically, because this is in the future, all of us healers. So chances are this autumn or the next 3 months, all of us are going to have moments when we are healers. And at the same time, we are the beneficiaries of someone else's healing expression. Another energy which I would like to mention, but this is a bit later on the very end of the week. The sun holds a quincunx with Saturn. Now, this energy is also very not easy, so to speak, because Saturn in the sign of Pisces makes us remember all of the situations in the past where relationships, where contracts, where the theme of Libra, one-on-one alliances, even course of justice did not serve us well or disadvantaged us. This Saturn in the sign of Pisces, evokes the past, how we feel about the past. And for quite a few people, this can also represent past life energies or past life patterns as well. So feelings may be really, really unusual, weird, deja vus, situations in this incarnation which seem totally new. Libra, a communication, a contract, but we still feel a very, very strong sense of familiarity, as if I've done this before, but I haven't. But I so feel like I have. I know this person, but I don't. But I still sense a strong familiarity. Or I've been in this situation before. I've been before this choice, this decision, this, I don't know, having to choose before. So these deja vus can really, really come into our sphere, and they might, how should I say, slow us down a little bit, because otherwise, Sun and Libra, we might be ready to make a certain choice, sign a contract, etc., or look at things, from a very clear, as much clear Libra can be, perspective. And then there comes this Saturn evoking the past and making us sit down again and double check with our choices or with whatever is being highlighted, illuminated in our lives. Of course, just like Mars is in its opposite sign in the sign of Libra, so it's not able to bring out its best qualities. The sun is debilitated in the sign of Libra because the sun loves being in the sign of Aries, and this is the sign opposite to it. So it is in fall, as they say. But of course, neither the sun and Mars, especially in this, not just astrological, but geopolitical context, is quite okay that they're not all that powerful. It's quite a blessing that they're not able to bring forward their most intense qualities, because the sun in the sign of Libra is really forced to be empathic, is forced to think about the situation of others as well. In a ego, so it's not just me, sun, me. In Libra, it's me and it's we, all of us, or me and my girlfriend, boyfriend, me and my child, me and my dog, but it's you and someone or something else. And Mars, very much the same. I take action not just for my own interest, but for something in common, or you and me, or as I said, me and my boyfriend. There is someone else in the picture, and that is good. Why is it good? Because the other energies are not very peaceful. Aries, goddess of discord, conjunct the North Node. That's not an easy energy. And there is also, Mars getting close to that South Node in the sign of Libra. That is also where we're ready to rearrange alliances in our lives. So that's quite assertive in itself. But where both Mars and the Sun, having to do this in such a way where it doesn't do much more bad than, much more bad than good. That is the positive side of this energy. So yes, but as I said earlier, we are just before a very assertive full moon in Aries. But what comes in October is eclipse season. We will have an eclipse very, very close to that south node. So it's gonna be quite an intense month, quite an intense, period, quite an intense autumn. So this just prepares us for that. So a more assertive expression of these energies is without a doubt coming. So this just prepares us. This gives us the methodology and the know-how how to stay in inner peace, which will be so important. Important as if our lives would basically depend on it. So thank you everyone for listening. I would like to leave it at this. Again, I have to say, this week we are going to be feeling the frustration of our situations quite strongly, but this is where it's really, really up to us to turn the inner tide. Because yes, absolutely, all the reasons for frustrations are there, but we have so very many other reasons to aim towards our hopes, our breakthrough, to keep on working on whatever we are working on, because even if delayed, harvest will still come. And again, that Saturn and semi-square to Chiron still can, stir up the past in an uninvited way where it can just get into our own inner focus's way. Yet still, we need to basically cling on to hope, and we need to shift the inner feelings onto the most optimistic version as if our lives depended on it. And also, which doesn't make it all that easy, is that we also need to stay at least in a tiny bit of reality check, where we cannot immerse in an absolute way into dreams and fantasy, or the expression of our faith, which cannot manifest. It can manifest in ether, but it may not manifest, in Tellur, so the earthly plane. So thank you so much for listening. If you'd like, check out my tutorial video. Thank you for all the love and support. And if you'd like to support my channel, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, wishing everyone a blessed week. Until next time, bye for now.